Hi guys, welcome back. Today I am going to show you how I made a Shrek inspired Pinocchio. I am using cosplay in the medium firm and the doll color, and I did print out a template here to the scale that I want my final puppet to be. Then I started by rolling out some clay into little sausages to make each of the individual portions of the upper and lower arms and legs. I make sure to use my printout to compare the size of my clay sausages so that Pinocchio doesn't come out looking all cattywampus. Using my X-Acto knife, I cut away any excess clay. Then I use some wire and gently twist my clay sausages onto the wire, reshaping any imperfections as I go. Then I remeasure using my printout. I repeated this process for each individual leg and arm section, making sure to compare sizes to the opposite arm and leg. Then I start working on his shoulders by rolling out two little balls of clay. I use a flat surface such as this little glass disc and my fingers to shape the clay into two half spheres. Next, I start working on the bum/pelvis by using aluminum foil and my fingers to shape the clay around it into the correct shape. Then I mark where his legs will be using my ball tool and the image as a reference. Next, I use the same method to make his upper torso. Once his torso is complete, I use a needle tool to make the wood texture on all of the individual pieces. There really isn't much skill to this part, I just make lines that I think look like wood. You can use different thicknesses of needles to get different depths of fake wood grain, which I think makes it look more realistic, but it could just be my imagination. You can also add some little swirls to mimic where the knots in the wood would be as well. Now we finally get to work on Pinocchio's head and face. I use the same method as I did for the torso, foil and then shape the clay around it. Some people may be wondering why sculptors that use polymer clay use foil, and since this type of clay is oven cured, the foil ensures that there is an even baking temperature throughout the clay, which helps prevent cracking. Plus, having a solid lump of clay would also make certain parts of the sculpture way too heavy. Here I am just starting to add some of the facial details, such as the mouth and eye sockets. I use this flat edge tool to make the mouth opening square and as straight as possible. Then I use a ball tool to smooth out the inside of the mouth and refine any sharp edges. Then I come back with the flat edge tool to smooth the upper lip and blend it into the rest of the face. Next, I use some wire and insert it to the middle of the head. And then I plop a lump of clay and start blending it and shaping it into a nose. The reason you want to add some wire is to support the clay so that it doesn't break easily or get droopy while baking. We wouldn't want Pinocchio to have a droopy nose. After the nose is the correct nose shape, I use the same tools and technique to add the wood texture throughout the rest of the face, making sure to get the nose and around the eye sockets. Then I add some eyes and bake the head. After everything is baked and cooled, I begin the assembling. I originally intended on using wire to create the structure of the puppet. However, I found I didn't really like how rigid the joint areas were after I tested the wire. I started by drilling and using my needle tool to make holes wide enough to insert the wire. Then I decided to use a thin twine I had instead. I fed the twine through all of the arms and legs. I treated each piece kind of like a bead. I'm not gonna lie, this part did take some time, but I feel like the twine worked better than the wire. To attach the bottom of the torso to the top part, I used my little drill and made holes at an angle so that they would be as horizontal as possible. Then I used a curved needle to feed the twine so that it would loop back around. Then I made a knot and tucked the knot into the holes of the upper torso so that they wouldn't be visible. I decided I made the eyes too big and I didn't need another repeat of the Maleficent bug eye incident. So I decided to give Pinocchio a good old-fashioned eye surgery that I think I ended up botching anyways. Thankfully, I don't think he has a lawyer. Next, I gave Pinocchio his characteristic helmet head hair. After using Bake and Bond to attach raw clay to the baked head, I used my flat edge tool to make ridges all around his head. After some smoothing and shaping of his hair, I moved on to give him his puck-shaped ears by cutting 2 circles and adding wood texture with my needle tool. Then using the Bake and Bond to attach them to the baked head. Up next, it was time to give Pinocchio his Louis Vuitton clogs by shaping 2 lumps of clay into something resembling his shoes. Then I used a piece of plastic wrap to smooth out rough edges and curve the top of the clay, while keeping the bottom still stuck to the tile surface so that the sole of the shoe stays flat. Now, time for his hat. I first use foil and clay to make a cone shape for the top. Then I use a cookie cutter and some thick cardstock to draw a circle and cut it out. Using the same cookie cutter, I cut 2 pieces of clay and sandwiched the cardstock between the clay, smoothing the brim out of the hat. Then I attached the cone to the brim by using my silicone tool to blend in the seams before adding wood texture to the whole thing. For the hands, I cut 2 pieces of white clay and shaped his palms. Then I rolled some clay noodles and cut them into tiny segments to make his fingers. Then I pop everything into the oven to bake. After the head is re-baked with the hat, I attach it to the torso by drilling a neck hole and using super glue and a wooden dowel cut to the correct height so that he still has a tiny neck. I made some buttons off camera, and after they are baked, I attach those to the torso with super glue as well. Next, it is time to assemble the hands. I use a lighter to heat up a sewing needle, and with the hot needle, I poke holes through the fingers and palms. Then I use string and super glue to attach the fingers to the palms. Once the hands are assembled, I use my Dremel to drill a small cavity to make room to glue the wrists to the arms. After everything is assembled, I use acrylic paints to bring Pinocchio to life. It would have probably been easier to paint everything before assembly, but hey, what's the point of life if you can't figure out how to hold a floppy Pinocchio without getting paint everywhere? Once the paint was dry, I added a screw eye pin to the top of the hat. In hindsight, I probably should have found his center of gravity first and drilled a little closer to the center of his head, but oh well. Then I pierced Pinocchio's nose so that I could add that tiny little leaf that he has growing out on a little branch. I use a tiny bit of super glue to make sure it doesn't fall out. Then I used a brown wash to add some depth to the wood grain on his arms, legs, face, nose, and hat. I tried my best to assemble a marionette puppet rig out of popsicle sticks and string. I wanted the option to remove the strings without leaving holes on the whole sculpture, so I just used a slip knot to attach some string to the legs and arms. And here is the final Pinocchio. Part of me wishes I would have drawn the thong on his butt, but we try to keep it PG on this channel sometimes. Thanks for sticking around and watching. Until next time.
I am wearing ladies' underwear.
Pinocchio, he's dead. He's dead.